question 2 and question 3. And then on the question 2, we are having micro and macro. On the question 3, we are also having micro and macro. And then on the question 4, we are going to have section C, which is the macroeconomics. And then on the question 6, we are going to have macroeconomics. And then on section B, it's going to be 30 marks. And then on section C is also going to be 30 marks. So it will be 20 on section A, 30 on section B, and 30 on section C. So now, my advice is also, if you are a teacher, you have taught economic pursuit and contemporary socioeconomic issues, you can as well set on those. You can include those on your test. So without waste of time, I'm going to start with the lesson for today. So the lesson for today is dynamics of the market, which falls under microeconomics. So it's a paper 2 topic, microeconomics, dynamics of the market. So dynamics of the market is so interesting because it continues in grade 11 and also continues again in grade 12. So I'm saying this because if you are a grade 11 listening, if you are a grade 12 listening, this topic is also going to help you in passing your exam. So without any waste of time, I'm going straight to the dynamics of the market. So we are going to be dealing with the dynamics of market. First, on the dynamics of the market, we are going to define what is a market. We are also going to make sure that we know the criteria of a market to exist. We must know the criteria of a market to exist. We must also know the kinds of market. A learner must also know the market structure. A learner must also know the functions of the market. And the learner must also know the utility, must know value, must know also the price. And then if time allows us, we're gonna go to the demand as well as the supply. So I'm going to start with the definition of a market. When you are defining a market, there are several definitions that you must consider as a learner. So you must say a market is where buyers and sellers meet to exchange goods and services. You must say a market is where buyers and sellers meet to exchange goods and services. So now, it means in a market, there must be a buyer, there must also be a seller. And then the reason why there is a buyer and the seller is because they must exchange the goods and the services. And then these goods and services, they must have a price. So a market is where buyers and sellers meet to exchange goods and services at a given price. The other definition that a learner might use is that a market is the market force that brings demand and supply together. The market is where demand and supply are brought together. So the demand, you must know that the demand is the buyer and then the supply is the seller. So the market is there to make sure that these two are together. And then again, a learner will say a market is the market force that influences the price. Remember, the market force, we are referring to the demand and the supply. So the market force, we are referring to the buyer as well as the seller. So the buyer and the sellers are the one that influences the price in the market. The other learner will also say a market is any contact or communication, any contact or communication that brings the actual and the potential buyer and the actual and the potential seller together, or any contact or communication where the actual and the potential buyer and the actual and potential seller meet. Meaning in the market there must be the actual and the potential buyer, there must be the actual as well as the potential seller, and these two must meet. So now they are saying any contact. When they say any contact, it means a market can be at a mall. Any contact, they are referring to a place, meaning a market can occur at a place where two people meet. It be a mall, it be a shopping center, it be a bank, it be a farm where the buyer and the seller meet. And they are saying a market is also any communication. Any communication. When we are talking of communication, we are referring to, you can use a telephone to buy, and somebody can use a telephone to sell. We can use a radio also to advertise our products so that our buyers can also come and buy. So a market does not have to be a place. A market can also occur via communication. Then now, with that being said, there are market signals that are used. There are market signals that are used to reach the buyer. There are market signals that are used by the seller to reach the buyer. So the market signals are in a form of media. So buyers must know the price. How are they going to know the price? The buyers are going to know the price when the seller uses what we call market signal, which is our media. So the media can either be the print media or the electronic one. So with the print one, it's when the market uses telephones, the market uses TVs, the market uses radios, the market uses telephones. It's when they are using the electronic one. But when they are using the print one, it's when they are using the magazines, when they are using the newspapers. This is when you'll find ShopRite advertising their product on the newspaper, or ShopRite advertising their product on the magazine. So this is the market signals that the market uses to reach their customers or their buyers. So remember, I said a market is where buyers and sellers meet. A market is where the market force, demand and supply, influence the price. A market is any contact or communication between the actual and the potential buyer and the actual and the potential seller. So we are going to move to our next point. Our next point is saying, what are the criteria that must exist for a market to be there? So we're having criteria for a market to exist. So in order for our market to exist, they are saying there must be at least one potential buyer, meaning you must have a buyer as a seller. You must have a buyer as a seller. So there must be at least one potential buyer. There must also be at least one potential seller, meaning there must be somebody who is willing and able to sell. And when we are saying there must be a potential buyer, we are referring to this. There must be a buyer who is willing and able to buy. And if you are willing and able to buy, it means you can afford. Meaning there must be somebody who has the means. The other criteria is that the buyer must have the means. Speaking of means, we are referring to the cash. We are referring to money. Meaning the buyer must have the means to buy. You cannot say you are an actual or a potential buyer or you are willing and able to buy, whereas you don't have the means. So the fourth criteria is that the seller must have the goods to sell. The seller must have, or the supplier must have the goods to sell. So you must meet this criteria. There are 5 criteria, and the last criteria is that there must be a price for the goods and the services. There must be a price for the goods and the services. Remember, I said the first criteria is that there must be at least one buyer. There must be at least one seller. The buyer must have the means to buy, and then the seller must have the goods to sell. And then again, there must be a price for the goods and the services. So moving to the market structures. Market structure is how the market is organized. I'll give an example by myself, or I'll give an example by a person. A person is having a structure. You have a head, you have hair, you have ears, you have whatever. Therefore, a market also has a structure. The market has a structure. It is organized in this way. So the organization of a market structure is that there must be criteria. The market structure is having characteristics or criteria. Here are the criteria of a market structure, or the characteristics of a market structure. So in order for our market to be structured, we are going to look at this. The first one will be the number of firms. The number of firms, we are referring to how many firms are there in the market. How many firms are there in the market? I said the first one is the number of firms. We are going to look at how many firms are there in the market. The second one, we are going to look at the nature of the product. How does the product look like? Is the product homogeneous, or is the product heterogeneous? When we are saying the product is homogeneous, it means the product look the same, or the product are identical. When we are saying the product are homogeneous, we are saying the product look the same, or they are homogeneous. They are identical. So looking the same, what are we referring to? They look the same with regard to the quality. They look the same with regard to the design. I'll give you an example of an apple. When we are saying apples are homogeneous, it's because we are looking at the design of an apple. Even if they take you to Zimbabwe and ask you, what is this? They put an apple in front of you and say, what is this? You say it's an apple because you know the design of the apple. You also know the quality of you know how the apple tastes like. So now, when they say the product is heterogeneous, it means the product are different. The product are different. We use the word heterogeneous. Heterogeneous goods means those goods are different. So we go into number 3. With number 3 is the availability of information. The availability of information will be looking at this. Is the information easily accessible? If the information is easily accessible, we are going to say the information is perfect. We are going to say the information is imperfect, or the information is incomplete in that particular market. And then we go to number 4, which is the entrance, or the barriers of entry and exit. Is it easy for you to enter the market and exit the market at will? If it is easy for you to enter the market and exit the market at any time, we are going to say there is free entry and exit in the market. There is freedom of entry and exit in the market, or we can say the entry and the exit is easy, meaning there is easy entry and exit. But if it is not easy for you to enter and exit the market, we are going to say the entrance in the market is blocked. The entrance in the market is blocked. And sometimes the entrance in the market might be restricted, might be difficult. It might not be easy for you to enter the market due to the reason of not having enough capital. Due to the reason of not having enough capital, so we'll say be blocked. Then we go into collusion. Collusion is two or more business able to come together and agree on the price and the quantity. Can there be a secret negotiation between two or more of the businesses? Can it occur? If it can occur, if two or more people, or if two or more businesses can come together and agree on the price, we are going to say collusion is possible, or there is collusion. But if two or more firms cannot come together and agree on the price and the quantity, we are going to say collusion is impossible, meaning there is no collusion. So I've given you 5 characteristics of a market structure, which is the number of firms, the nature of the product, barriers of entry and exit, information, availability of information, as well as collusion. So last one, this one I want you to listen to me carefully, because it's the control over the price. The control over the price, we are going to look at the following. We are going to say, is the seller able to influence the price? If the seller or the firm can influence the price, therefore we are going to say they are price makers or price takers. But if the seller or the firms cannot influence the prices, they cannot control the prices, then we are going to say the sellers are price takers. The sellers are price takers if they cannot influence the price. The sellers are price makers if they can influence the price. So now I'm going to move to the kinds of market, and then we are going to take those characteristics of market structure and try to build a perfect market, the conditions of perfect market, or the characteristics of perfect market, and also the characteristics of imperfect market. So now, by so saying, I've given you the kinds of market. The kinds of market are perfect market and imperfect market. So the perfect market, the example for perfect market, we are having agricultural product. Agricultural product, I'm referring to maize meal. I'm referring to mangoes. I'm referring also to tomatoes. I'm also referring to cows, if you may say cows, or you can say beef. So those are agricultural product. And then the example again of perfect market is the JSE, Johannesburg Securities Exchange, where we buy and sell the shares. So now the example of perfect market is the shares. We are going to look at the shares. We are also going to look at gold, if you can say gold as an example of perfect market. So now the imperfect market is there because it failed to meet the conditions of perfect market. The imperfect market is there because it failed to meet the conditions of perfect market. Then now, so meaning the imperfect market is the opposite of perfect market. The imperfect market is the opposite of perfect market. So we're going to go through this like this. I'm going to start with the perfect market, the characteristics of perfect market, and then after go to the characteristics of imperfect market, including other types of imperfect market. So now, the perfect market, I said examples are agricultural product, JSE gold, So we are going to look at the number of firms in the perfect market. We are looking at how many firms are selling agricultural products. We are looking at how many firms are selling shares. So we are going to say the number of firms in the perfect market are many. Perfect market has many sellers. There are many sellers in the perfect market. Why are there many sellers in the perfect market? There are many sellers because if you go to Abasporot, you find somebody who's doing farming. If you go to Khobagodimo, you'll find somebody who is doing something, a project of spinach and whatsoever. Meaning if you travel from Lephalale to Polokwane, from Polokwane to Gauteng, you'll find so many people who are selling agricultural products. That's why we are saying there are many buyers, there are many sellers in this market. There are many sellers in the perfect market. And then we go again to the nature of the product. The nature of the product in the perfect market are homogeneous, meaning the product are identical or they look exactly the same. They look exactly the same with regard to the design as well as the quality. Meaning if we take you from here and you go to another province carrying a maize mill and say to that person and ask that person, what is this? The person will be able to say, this is a maize mill because they look exactly the same. So moving right along, we are going to the barriers of entry. They are saying the barriers of entry and exit in the perfect market, there is easy entry and exit, meaning there is free entry and exit. You can enter and exit the market at will. If you want to start selling your maize meal, meaning there is no one who will stop you from selling the maize meal, or there is no one who will stop you from selling the spinach that you have cultivated in your garden. So the entry and the exit is free. So we're moving to the availability of information. So they are saying in the perfect market, the information is complete. The information is easily accessible, meaning you know very well how to cultivate a spinach, you know very well how to cultivate or how to do crops, you know very well how they are being done. So the information is easily accessible. So we go to collusion. Collusion, I remember I said, can two or more people come together and agree on the price? So they are saying in this market, in the perfect market, there is no collusion. Two or more people cannot come and agree on the price and the quantity. You'll find that somebody from another province is selling the same good, but they are not selling at the same prices as you are. So we are moving to the imperfect market. I said the imperfect market is the opposite of the perfect market. And then I said the conditions of the perfect market failed to meet that one of the perfect market. So meaning we are going to do the opposite. So in the imperfect market, when we do the number of sellers or the number of firms or business, we are going to say we have few sellers. There are few sellers in this market. So we are going to move to the nature of the product. The nature of the product, you are supposed to say product are unique. Product are unique. If you don't want to say product are unique, you just say product are different. Product are different. So product don't look the same. Product do not look the same in the imperfect market. And then we move to the barriers of entry and exit. They are saying the barriers of entry and exit in the imperfect market, entry and exit is blocked. The entry and the exit in the imperfect market is blocked. So we are also moving to, meaning if it is blocked, meaning you cannot enter and exit the market at will. And then we're moving to information. So the information is, the availability of information is incomplete, meaning the information is not easily accessible. The information is incomplete because it is not easily accessible. So we go to the control over the price. They are saying in the imperfect market, sellers are price makers. Sellers are price makers, meaning they set their own price, or sellers can influence the price. What are they referring to in the imperfect market? They are referring to ESCOM. They are also referring to Telkom. So meaning the ESCOM can set their own prices. The entry into the ESCOM is blocked. The information of the Telkom and the ESCOM, now there will be a contradiction of saying, is the information complete or incomplete? But they are saying the imperfect market, the information is incomplete. But when we move to the monopoly and say ESCOM, now we are going to say the information under monopoly is going to be complete. So there will be contradictions there. But as I said, the imperfect market is when the market did not meet the conditions of the perfect market. So we are looking at the opposite of the perfect market. So moving, I said I will go through with you with regard to the imperfect market, the types of imperfect market. So imperfect market is having three types. It's having monopoly, it's having oligopoly, it's also having monopolistic competition. The imperfect market consists of monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. So the example of monopoly is ESCOM. Why is ESCOM the example of monopoly? Because it's the only provider of electricity in South Africa. Because it is the only provider of electricity in South Africa. So we are going to oligopoly. Oligopoly is having these examples. We are having networks. If I say calculate networks, you say MTN, Vodacom, Cell C, ATA, then you come to a point where you cannot count anymore. Meaning, in oligopoly, we have few sellers. And then the other example will be car manufacturers. If I can say to you, count the manufacturers of cars, you'll count, and then there will be somewhere where you stop because there are no longer other firms that you can mention. And then when we go to monopolistic competition, we are referring to restaurants. If I can say calculate or count, count the number of restaurants that you know, you can count as many as possible. You can count as many as you can, and they are endless. In actual sense, they are endless, because you start from your community to the next community until you go to the town. They are countless. So in actual sense, what I was trying to say is that monopoly is where we have one seller or one firm. Oligopoly is where we have few sellers, or you can say oligopoly is where we have small dominant firms. They are small but dominant. In the oligopoly, the firms or the sellers are small but they are dominant. So under monopolistic competition, you are going to say the firms are many. We are having many firms. Remember, I said we are speaking of restaurants in the monopolistic competition. In the oligopoly, we are speaking of networks or car manufacturers. So in the monopoly, we are speaking of ESCOM. So we are going to look at monopoly and do the market structure or the characteristics of market structure regarding monopoly. So now they are going to say monopoly, the number of firms, you say there is only one seller or you can say there's only a single seller. And then we go to the nature of the product. Remember, we are speaking of electricity. So with electricity, you are going to say the nature of the product in monopoly is unique. And then the question will say, why do you say it is unique? It is unique because in monopoly, there are no close substitutes. They are no close substitute. Not necessarily saying there are no substitute. There are substitutes. Substitutes can be firewood, can be gas, can be solar. They are substitutes, but those substitutes are not close to electricity. So that's why we are saying the nature of the product in the monopoly is unique. And then we move to the barriers of entry. The barriers of entry in the monopoly is blocked. The barriers of entry in monopoly is blocked, meaning you cannot enter and exit into the monopoly. That's why we are still having, since I was born in ESCOM, and we are still having ESCOM. I did not even see a person starting SESCOM. There's no SESCOM, there's no LESCOM, it's only ESCOM, the only provider of electricity in South Africa. Why? Because the entry is blocked. And then we go to collusion. Monopoly, we are saying it's only one seller. Since it is only one seller, collusion is impossible. One business cannot collude alone. One business, if there is collusion, we said collusion is when two or more businesses come together and agree on the price. So ESCOM cannot go and meet. ESCOM does not have competitor, so it will not go and meet with. Do you get my point? It will not meet anyone because it's the only provider of electricity in our country, meaning there is no collusion. What about the control over price? The control over price, monopoly or ESCOM has control over price. If it has control over price, it means they are price setters or they are price makers, meaning ESCOM makes their own or set their own prices. ESCOM set their own prices or make their own prices. So I think I did explain monopoly, and then I'm going to explain oligopoly. So under oligopoly, like I said, we are having car manufacturers, which is Mazda, Toyota, you can name them. We are also having networks, which are Vodacom, Cell C, Ntene, you can name them, but they are few. So now, because they are few, now we are going to say the number of firms in the oligopoly. So the number of firms is that we are having few sellers. But these few sellers, you must remember, they are dominant. They are well known. They are dominant. They are dominant. So now, we go to the nature of the product in the oligopoly. So they are saying the nature of the product in the oligopoly, the nature of the product are homogeneous and heterogeneous. So in the oligopoly, we are also having an example of petrol. But they say the petrol looks exactly the same. The petrol looks exactly the same. But when you go to cars are different. Cars are different. So the nature of the product in the oligopoly, it's either homogeneous. The product can look homogeneous, and the product can also look different, which is heterogeneous. Then we move to the availability of information. The availability of information, they are saying the information in the oligopoly is incomplete. The information in the oligopoly is incomplete, meaning the information is not easily accessible. The information is not easily accessible. So we go to the collusion. Now they are saying in the oligopoly there is collusion. Collusion is possible. So in the oligopoly, two companies or two firms can come together and negotiate on the price as well as the quantity. I'll give you an example of these networks. You go to Vodacom, they have 5 rand a time. You go to Cell C, they have 5 rand a time. You go to Ntene, they have 5 rand a time. Therefore, it means they have colluded somewhere, somehow. Therefore, they did what we call collective monopoly. They did what we call cartel. They did what we call cartel or collective monopoly. They came together and agree on the price. And then again on the petrol station, when you go to this petrol station, you will find that the price is the same as the other petrol station. And remember, you must know that the petrol, the price are set by government. But then when you go to the petrol stations, you will find that the prices are the same. Meaning, it shows us that in the oligopoly, there is this collusion that is occurring. And then, when we look at the control over the price, with the control over the price of oligopoly, the oligopolies set their own price. They can influence the prices. Since we are saying they can influence the prices, it means now that they are price makers or they are price setters. So we are going for the last one of the monopolistic, which is monopolistic competition. Remember, they fall under imperfect market. They fall under imperfect market because I said in the beginning that imperfect market consists of monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. We go into monopolistic competition. With monopolistic competition, I spoke of KFC, I spoke of Nando's, I spoke of Wimpy, I spoke of Shisanyamas. So those restaurants, they are many. Therefore, meaning the number of firms, you're going to say as a learner that the number of firms are many in the monopolistic competition. Firms are many in the monopolistic competition. And then as we go to the saying of many, I said, at your village, there are so many restaurants. They call them by their surnames. Some call them by their daughters' names. Some call them by their nephew or cousin's names. So there are so many restaurants. There are so many restaurants that are competing with one another in the monopolistic competition. So now, we go to the nature of the product. The nature of the product is that the product are differentiated. The product are differentiated. The product can be differentiated in a form of packaging. The packaging of the restaurant 1 will not be the same as the packaging of the restaurant 2. The packaging of the KFC is not the same as the packaging of the Shisanyam. So now, it means now products are differentiated. They might be selling chicken, but there is a way of differentiating their chicken. So products are differentiated in monopoly. Again, under monopolistic, in the monopolistic competition. So under monopolistic competition, we are also going to look at the barriers of entry and exit. And then the barriers of entry and exit in the monopolistic competition is that it is easy to enter and exit the market. Remember, in the oligopoly, the barriers of entry and exit is that it is restricted, it is difficult. It is difficult in the oligopoly, whereas in the monopolistic competition, it is easy. So moving to the collusion, these restaurants, do they meet? The question that you should ask yourself is that these restaurants, do they meet? And they are saying it is impossible for these restaurants to meet and agree on the price and the quantity. Therefore, collusion is impossible, meaning there is no collusion. What about the control over price? Do they set their own prices or do they make their own prices? Then now we are saying they set their own prices, they make their own prices, therefore they are price makers or price takers. Remember, when I was doing perfect market and imperfect market, we were taking some of the characteristics. In the imperfect market, we were taking some of the characteristics from the three, which is the monopoly, the oligopoly, and the monopolistic. If you remember, I said in the imperfect market, the nature is unique. It comes from the monopoly. And then again, I said the control over price is that they are price takers. They are price makers. They are price makers, which comes from the monopoly, the oligopoly, and the monopolistic competition. And then again, I said the number of firms, I said they are few sellers or few firms. The few firms came from the oligopoly market. So you can see that the imperfect market is formed by the characteristics from the monopoly, the oligopoly, and the monopolistic competition. Then now, I want you to look at this. We are having a perfect market. In the perfect market, we are saying the control over price is that the perfect market are the price takers, meaning the sellers accept the price given. The sellers accept the price given. The price is given by who? The price is given by the demand and the supply. So the demand and the supplies are the one that determines the price. Thank you very much. We'll continue next time.